Afghanistan is often reduced to a single era, a single war, a single image. But that is a mistake. This land is older than almost all the borders we are used to. People have lived here for centuries. Persians, Greeks, Arabs, and Mongols passed through here. And almost every people left behind not only ruins, but mysteries as well. Beneath the hills of Bamiyan stretch cave systems that still have not been fully explored. In Badakhshan, at an altitude of about 3,000 meters, mines are still operating whose age reaches 7,000 years. And remarkably, many of the mining techniques there have hardly changed. And in Ghor province stands a 12th century minaret with ornamentation in which scholars have seen a complex mathematical logic. Western science described similar structures only in the 1970s. Now to one of the most unusual places in the country. In the very heart of Afghanistan lies Band-e Amir. It is a chain of 6 lakes at an altitude of about 3,000 meters. Their waters shine cobalt blue and emerald green. The lakes are separated by natural travertine dams. This is a mineral deposit that the water laid down layer by layer over thousands of years. That is how walls up to 10 meters high were formed. The name Band-e Amir is usually translated as the Dams of the Commander. According to local legend, they were created by Caliph Ali, the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad. Supposedly, with a single movement of his hand, he raised these barriers to bring water to barren land. Geologists, of course, explain it differently. By their estimates, the Travertine dams appeared many centuries before Islam. But the legend itself does not disappear. The work of nature simply looks too unusual. And the most interesting thing is hidden not on the surface, but beneath it. Each of the 6 lakes differs in color from the next. This is not a trick of the light. It is the result of different chemical compositions in the water. Each lake has its own underground springs. They carry different minerals, but hydrologists still do not have an exact map of these water flows. Scientists understand the general pattern. However, a complete model of the underground system still does not exist. The depth is not entirely clear either, especially in Lake Bandi Haibat. This is the largest lake in the chain. Local fishermen have long said that in the central part, their nets do not reach the bottom. Echo-sounding measurements taken in different years have produced different figures. That means either the bottom there is very complex, or the depth really does exceed the usual calculations for a body of water like this. By the way, if details like these interest you, subscribe to the channel. Here we examine not only well-known facts, but also what usually remains behind the scenes. Bamiyan is known throughout the world for its Buddha statues. They stood here from the 6th century AD, but no less important was the rock massif around them. Behind the statues and beside them, a whole network of caves and tunnels lay hidden for centuries. And on several levels, it was not just a monument. It was a vast monastic complex. The Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang, who visited Bamiyan in 632 AD, wrote of thousands of monks. They lived in caves carved directly into the rock. The walls of these caves were covered with frescoes. And here the story takes a sharp turn. These paintings turned out to be among the oldest examples of oil painting in the world. They are dated to the period from the 5th to the 9th century AD. That is several centuries earlier than oil paints became commonplace in Europe. When Japanese and European restorers confirmed this in 2008, the history of painting effectively demanded revision. It turned out that an important technology existed in Central Asia long before Europe's flourishing. But even that is not the limit. No one has named the total number of caves in Bamiyan with complete certainty. New entrances are found on almost every expedition. Some passages are blocked by cave-ins. Others go deeper into the rock than researchers have managed to explore. That is why the local legend of a cave called the Library has still not died. According to local accounts, manuscripts are hidden there, concealed by monks before the invasion of conquerors. There is no proof, but there is no refutation either. Only a small part of the system has been explored. The Hindu Kush also preserves traces of the past. It is a mountain system about 800 kilometers long. The armies of Alexander the Great passed through its mountain passes. Caravans of the Silk Road moved through here. Timurid conquerors and British expeditions of the 19th century passed this way. Each left something in these mountains. And most of those traces have still not been found. At the Kawak Pass, at an altitude of about 3,550 meters, local shepherds gather coins every spring that are washed out by the melting snow. Among them are Greek, Kushan, Sasanian and Arab ones. It is almost a ready-made history textbook, only it lies not in a museum, but on a mountainside. And what is especially important is that there have been almost no systematic excavations there. Many of the finds were made by chance. But the mystery of the Hindu Kush is not only in the coins. In the remote valleys live the Nuristanis. This is a people sharply different from their neighbors both in language and in culture. Scholars classify their languages as a separate branch of the Indo-European family. They cannot be reduced simply to dialects of neighboring peoples. Genetic studies have also revealed rare markers linked to ancient populations of Central Asia. In other places, such lineages were long ago absorbed into new waves of migration. The oral tradition of the Nuristanis, it preserves stories about gods and rituals that researchers compare with ancient Iranian and Vedic mythology. So what we have before us is not merely an ethnographic peculiarity. It is a possible living echo of a very ancient world, and it is gradually disappearing. The number of speakers is shrinking. A significant part of this tradition has still not been recorded. There is yet another important layer. Alexander the Great founded at least 12 cities on the territory of modern Afghanistan. Almost all of them are connected with his name in one way or another. However, the location of one of the most famous Alexandrias long remained a matter of dispute. This is Alexandria of the Caucasus. It was usually associated with the area of modern Bagram north of Kabul. Excavations did indeed confirm that a major Greco-Bactrian city existed there. But in the 1930s and 1940s, French archaeologists found something far more important. Beneath the Greek city lay older layers, and beneath them, even older ones. The deepest levels of Bagram date to roughly the 3rd millennium BCE. This is the age of the Egyptian pyramids. And here a question arises to which there is still no clear answer. Who built these cities 2,000 years before Alexander? What civilization lived here so early? The excavations pose this question very clearly, but so far they have not been able to answer it fully. The situation was further complicated by the fact that many artifacts proved vulnerable. Some of the finds from Bagram were kept in the Kabul Museum. In the 1990s and 2000s, the museum was repeatedly looted. Some objects ended up in private collections around the world. Others disappeared forever. And finally, Lake Shiwa. It lies in Bamiyan province, at an altitude of about 3,700 meters. Its very name is surprising. It is a direct reference to the Hindu god Shiva. For a region where Islam has dominated for more than 1,000 years, such a name looks like a trace of a very deep past. Local residents explain it simply. The name predates Islam, and no one changed it, because the lake is still considered sacred. People come to its shores to ask for healing and well-being. They leave ribbons on the stones. They throw coins into the water. People perform ritual ablutions. This is not a typically Islamic practice. It clearly goes back to older religious layers of the region. And what is especially curious is that behind this tradition, the waters of Shiwa really do have a feature confirmed by analyses. They contain a high concentration of minerals that have long been used in local medicine to treat skin diseases. So this is not merely a beautiful legend. The healing properties of the water have a real chemical basis. Scientists link this composition to the region's ancient volcanic activity, but the fact itself remains astonishing. People without laboratories or instruments manage to notice the effects of this water, preserve the knowledge, and pass it down through the centuries. And this is perhaps one of Afghanistan's strongest traits. Here the memory of the past lives not only in stone, but also in habits, names and living human stories. In the hard-to-reach gorge of the Hari Rud River stands the minaret of Jam. Its height reaches 65 meters. It was built in the 12th century under Sultan Ghiyath al-Din Ghurid. At that time, these lands were the heart of the Ghurid state, one of the most remarkable Islamic civilizations of the Middle Ages. The minaret is included on the UNESCO World Heritage List. But what astonishes most is not its height, and not its decoration. The main mystery is hidden in the geometry itself. The brick surface is covered with a complex ornament. On close examination, it resembles a quasi-crystalline pattern. Western science described such structures only in the second half of the 20th century. Yet here, craftsmen used similar principles 8 centuries earlier. In 2007, mathematician Peter Liu of Harvard University showed that Islamic artisans knew how to construct ornaments with extremely complex symmetry. This is not just decoration. It is precise calculation hidden in brick. How they arrived at such a solution, we do not know. Through experience, through craft intuition, or through knowledge that was later lost? There is still no answer. And this is especially important because the minaret itself stands in a gorge that is difficult to reach for much of the year because of flooding. A significant part of the monument and its surroundings has still not been fully studied. Balkh is another layer of the same mystery, one of the oldest cities in the world. It was called the Mother of Cities, and that is no exaggeration. Archaeology speaks of continuous life here for at least 3,500 years. Balkh was the capital of Bactria, of the Hellenistic realms, after Alexander's campaigns, of the Arab Caliphate, and of the Timurid Empire. Each new century built here on top of the old one. Today the shrine of Hazrat Ali rises above the ancient layers. It is one of the most revered sanctuaries in Afghanistan. But beneath it lie millennia of almost unrevealed history. And it is here that tradition places the birth of Zoroaster. If that is true, then Balkh may be the place where a religious line emerged that influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Ideas of angels, demons, the Last Judgment, and resurrection entered a huge part of the world's spiritual history. This cannot yet be proven, but it cannot be disproven either. There is almost no written evidence from that era. French archaeologists who worked here in the mid-20th century managed to describe important finds. However, political upheavals interrupted the excavations. Some of the reports remained in the archives of Paris. Some disappeared. By the way, if details like these interest you, subscribe to the channel. Here we examine not myths, but real historical mysteries. What lies deeper beneath the already uncovered layers of Balkh is still unknown. In the valleys of Nuristan, another rare tradition survived for a long time. Until the beginning of the 20th century, a distinctive wooden architecture existed here. Multi-tiered houses and temples were decorated with carvings of animals, horsemen, and strogimi patterns. Researchers see a strange mixture of motifs in this. In some places, ancient India can be heard. In others, the classical world. In others still, very old local roots. When in 1895 and 1896, Nuristan was finally incorporated into Afghanistan, and the population embraced Islam, many old sanctuaries were destroyed or rebuilt. Very little has survived. A few examples made their way into the Kabul Museum and into European collections. Their origin still causes debate. The columns are especially intriguing. Their tops resemble the Corinthian capitals of Greek architecture. This may be a coincidence, or it may be a very distant trace of Hellenistic influence after the campaigns of Alexander the Great. There is also a third version, a common Indo-European layer reaching back into prehistoric depths. No hypothesis has become definitive. The oral traditions of the Nuristanis add another touch. They say that their ancestors came from the West in deep antiquity, but no one knows exactly what that West meant, and it is also unclear when the migration took place. Linguists and geneticists are still working here. In the mountains of Badakhshan lies a mystery of another kind. At an altitude of more than 3,000 meters is one of the oldest lapis lazuli deposits in the world. It has been mined for at least 7,000 years. That is an almost unbelievable span of time. Lapis lazuli from Badakhshan has been found in the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, in the ornaments of Sumerian nobility, and in the monuments of Mesopotamia. Later, ultramarine was made from this stone. In medieval Europe, it was the most expensive blue pigment. It was used to paint the robes of the Virgin Mary and the most important icons and altarpieces. But the hardest mystery here is not the beauty of the stone. It is the road. The mines of Badakhshan lie in one of the harshest regions of Central Asia. Even today, they are difficult to reach. In winter, the passes close for months. And yet 5,000 years ago, this heavy stone somehow made its way to Egypt and Mesopotamia. Historians do not have a complete map of these trade routes. We know only the result. The stone traveled enormous distances and became part of royal treasures. The mines are still operating today, and the methods have hardly changed. The rock is heated with fire, then it is sharply cooled with water. The stone cracks. That is how it was done thousands of years ago. That is how it is done today. Local workers say it simply. The mountain itself decides how much stone to give. At the confluence of the Helmand and Arghandab rivers stand the ruins of Qala-e-Bast. Of the fortress, the best preserved feature is a huge arch. Its height is about 35 meters. It is one of the largest arches of medieval Islamic architecture to have survived to our time. It has stood for almost 1,000 years. The fortress was built under the Ghaznavids, when their sultanate was one of the main powers of the 11th century Islamic world. It was in that era that scholars, poets, and masters gathered at the court of Mahmud of Ghazni. Al-Biruni worked here, one of the greatest scholars of the Middle Ages. Ferdowsi also lived here, the author of the Shahnameh, the great epic of Persian literature. And this arch has its own mystery. Its orientation is such that on certain days the shadow points exactly east toward Ghazni, the capital of the state. This may have been a deliberate symbol of power, or it may have been a coincidence. Measurements show precision, but the builder's intention remains unclear. The Panjshir Valley is known for its inaccessibility, but long before its military fame, it was known for another reason: for silver. The mines of Panjshir were already being worked in the 9th and 10th centuries AD. The Arab geographer Ibn Haqal wrote of the valley as one of the largest sources of silver in the Islamic world. This is an important detail. For centuries, Afghanistan was not the edge of history, but one of its knots. Metal was extracted here that fed trade, coinage, and the power of entire states. And the more closely you look at places like these, the clearer a simple thought becomes. Beneath the mountains, ruins, and ancient roads of this land, a huge part of history is still hidden, one that humanity is only beginning to understand. Panjshir silver was known far beyond the mountains themselves. Coins made from it have been found throughout the trade belt, from Spain to China. That alone speaks to the scale of extraction and exchange. But the main mystery is not the fame of the metal, but how it was extracted at all. The ore veins in Panjshir descend into the depths at an awkward angle. For simple mining, this is almost the worst possible option. Such seams are hard to trace, even harder to open safely. And yet medieval miners extracted a great deal of silver from there. Without modern technology, without precise geological maps, without mechanical ventilation or drilling rigs, exactly how they drove mines through such geology has not been fully reconstructed by science. There is also a local explanation, almost fairy tale in sound. In Panjshir they said that silver grows, as if a vein already thought exhausted would yield metal again a few years later. Geologists offer a rational version. Deep hydrothermal solutions could have transported the metal and redeposited it in cracks in the rock. That sounds convincing. But one important detail still remains unresolved. The rate of such redeposition specifically under Panjshir conditions has hardly been measured, which means the folk observation can neither be fully confirmed nor definitively rejected. There is, however, an even greater mystery. It concerns not just one valley, but the entire country. Afghanistan remains one of the least studied archaeological territories in the world, and the reason is not the poverty of its past. The reason is the poverty of access to it. Political instability for nearly half a century repeatedly interrupted major scientific programs. The French archaeological mission worked here from the 1920s to the 1970s. During that time, researchers managed to cover only a small part of the known sites. Then a new stage began. Soviet specialists also made important discoveries. But that period too was cut short. The following decades all but closed the country to systematic science. By the way, if you are interested in stories like this, here we examine not only well-known facts, but also the blank spots of history. And here is what is especially important today. Satellite images from the last 20 years show traces across the whole territory of Afghanistan, of things that have not yet been excavated. Beneath the soil, regular lines and geometric outlines are visible. For archaeologists, this is a troublingly familiar sign. This is what hidden walls, quarters, fortifications, and ancient street grids usually look like. Such signals have been recorded in Ghor province, in Zabul, in Badakhshan. Instruments can already see what the shovel has not yet reached. This is not surprising. Afghanistan lies at the crossroads of the ancient world. Branches of the Silk Road passed through here. Greek, Indian, Persian, and Central Asian influences intersected here. Trade networks, languages, religions, and artistic styles changed here. That is why every unopened hill here may turn out to be not just a settlement, but a node in a much larger history. That is why Afghanistan cannot be reduced only to the events of recent decades. It is one of the largest undiscovered pages in the history of humanity, a country where one cultural layer lies beneath another, and yet another deeper still, where much has already been documented, but not explained, and even more has not been found at all. Panjshir silver, hidden cities, ancient roots, and lost centers of knowledge, All this awaits those who may one day be able to study the land calmly and consistently. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you again soon.